Another fantasy championship storyline comes from the 49ers Commanders game where, listen, Matthew, Christian McCaffrey carried a lot of people to fantasy championships this year. And it's not that he put up a goose egg, but with the calf strain in Week 17, it's safe to say this was a fantasy championship disappointing performance from a player that was incredible the entire season.
Yeah, I mean, look, he just 13 fantasy points, running back 21 as well. It was a game that was kind of workmanlike for the 49ers. They didn't need to do much to defeat my Commanders. So certainly disappointing. He leaves, as you mentioned, he left the game early. They want to be cautious with it. He's not going to play in Week 18 against the Rams. He's got this mild calf strain. We'll talk about that a little bit coming up. But, the expectation here, Elijah Mitchell, Jordan Mason will fill in for him. But he was unbelievable this year. He's the number one running back in fantasy, obviously, for the season, averaging over 24 fantasy points per game this year. 391 total fantasy points, his most in a season since 2019. He was the number one player in fantasy football. You could argue he was the fantasy MVP because I saw him going sometimes as like number 5 overall. People were drafting Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase over him. McCaffrey going like the middle of the first round. To get that kind of value in the middle of the first round is unbelievable. If you're interested, my way too early top 50 for 2024 is available now on rotoworld.com, NBCsports.com, 100% free. Of course, I'm a company man, but not a surprise. Christian McCaffrey is my number one overall player for 2024.
Jay, do you think Offensive Player of the Year is still up for grabs right now, or is somebody kind of separated from the pack as we take a look here?
I think McCaffrey, that minus 300 price is justified. I mean, I personally would vote for Tyreek Hill, but I think McCaffrey, there is the sense that, 2K scrimmage yards, 21 touchdowns, number one seed, Niners, it feels like his award. But Tyreek Hill, Sunday Night Football, if he goes off against the Bills and has a Tyreek Hill game where he has 150 yards in a win that clinches the division for Miami, at that point, I think Tyreek would win the award. But I think these odds are fair. The weird one for me is, and I think his case is coalescing too late, CeeDee Lamb has another 200-yard game against the Washington Commanders and wins the receiving title, which is very in play, as Matthew will know, having watched Commanders football this season, to clinch the NFC East in that game. I just think it's probably come together too late for CD, and he's just not in that discussion with McCaffrey and Tyreek. But at these prices, I wouldn't be betting anyone in particular. I think those prices are fair.
Pretty easy day for Brock Purdy, 22-28, 230 yards, 2 touchdowns. Deebo Samuel gets volume both through the air and on the ground. Brandon Ayuk gets the touchdown, 7 catches, 114 yards. Matthew, it's going to be tough next summer to rank these guys, how to differentiate and separate Ayuk and Deebo in this offense.
I don't think you need to. I mean, I think both guys, we've seen there's a number of offenses where they have, multiple elite wide receivers. We saw that, this year didn't end up panning out, but we expected that with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith both finished as top 10 wide receivers this year as well. I think it's going to be hard to keep Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua outside of the top 10 next year among wide receivers. And I think Deebo and Ayuk are both right there as well in terms of, you're right. Do you prefer Deebo because maybe the rushing, or Ayuk because he gets banged up a little bit less? I don't think it matters. Both guys are superstars in fantasy and in real life in the NFL. And this offense, we expect Kyle Shanahan to be back. We expect the entire offense to be back and be filled with fantasy goodness. Brock Purdy, by the way, to your point, I think Brock Purdy's a top 10 fantasy quarterback next year. He finishes the year as QB8, averaging over 18 fantasy points per game. And in a game against Washington, did what he should do. Right, which is, a couple touchdown passes. Again, very workmanlike performance. He finishes the week as QB 12, 17.6 fantasy points per game. He's had at least 20 fantasy points in over half his games this year. Pretty impressive.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com. And I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched. Or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.